Okay. Okay, tá much beor. It's good. I mean, my agate. We're back again. It's Easter time. Casca holiday, Guler. We have new guests tonight, folks. Oliver and Una from County Kerry, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we're going to do a wee quick intro. Karen, of course, needs no introduction. She's been on before. But we'll talk about the idea is we'll talk about tonight the Ukraine situation, obviously, but and how Ireland's responding to it, and whether it's good, bad, or too much, or indifferent, or whatever. And then we'll go on to well, we'll talk about Sligo initially before we get into all that. We can't ignore that the news there from this week, and we'll talk a wee bit about Ireland's neutrality. So, welcome on, Oliver and Una. Do you want to just give us a wee quick intro about how you got involved with us, or what? Where you just go?
Yeah, basically, had, I suppose, I just hit a situation where I came across, would say, at a rough time encountering the judiciary in Kerry and with family matter, and I thought, you know, something felt wrong, something felt off about, what I was going through, and basically, it was a very difficult situation, and I thought, something should be done about this. So myself and my missus were saying, what would we, go to Sinn Féin? We thought they were a nationalist party, and to try and do something because, like the Greek philosopher Plato once said, the price of not participating in politics is you'll be ruled by your inferiors. And a few years later, when I was out of this trouble that I found myself in, the judge was actually dismissed for sexual assault himself in Kerry,
Right.
and that that was actually two judges in a row in the county, district court judges, because the guy before him was dismissed for and it's well documented, and both these guys were never charged. Nothing was done with them. And it's kind of how I got involved in politics, because I thought that there has to be a party out there that stands for things like absolute truth, that
Yeah.
there is such a thing.
Like
And
truth seekers, yeah.
yeah, and not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but at the same time, to say, this is right and this is wrong, and it's kind of how we came across the Freedom Party. Is we thought we'd go with Sinn Féin, and next thing was we said, hold on a second, Una came across this group
Yeah.
with John Bowler, and we looked them up, and we went to a meeting, and we were involved since. You
Okay.
know,
And Una, you're from England, isn't that correct? Yeah, originally.
Yeah, originally from England. My parents are Irish, Irish all the way through, I suppose, at the beginning of time nearly. I came over around about 15 years ago, and that's when I met Oliver when I came over here from England to Ireland. And so at the moment, I'm actually with Oliver now, and we're farming away here in South Kerry on a little dairy farm. So we can understand also, problems with farming as well too. But I suppose that's a subject for another day. But
Yeah.
so that's how I came
Right,
here.
Well,
yeah,
thanks for that, and welcome aboard, and hopefully we'll have more discussions as we go on. But like the thing that happened in Sligo this week is
Mhm.
a lot of people would think that this could be the tip of the iceberg of this sort of thing going on, and um, are we not vetting immigrants right? I mean, I don't want this to be another immigrant bashing thing, because we're not bashing
No.
immigrants. We're talking about the fact that we're just not having any discussion around um, the vetting of people that are coming in.
Yeah.
If we were, that maybe these things wouldn't happen. We could avoid that. Oliver and Una, do you want to chip
Well,
in on that, or?
well, there's an old saying in Japan, the fish rots from the head down. Um, you see, this is coming from the top down, and I remember maybe it's a year or more so ago when Micheál Martin stood up in the Dáil and said, "We want nothing to do with sovereignty; it's
Yeah,
backward thinking."
yeah,
And now you see him emphatically defending Ukraine's border,
yeah,
but at the same time, if we defend our own, we all the labels and pejoratives are put on us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you said, by all means, if people want a working visa or a working permit, that's fine, and make sure that they don't have any serious criminal records.
Yeah.
But the problem with some of the people that are coming in, it's not just the people that come in. Like what we saw with this guy, he was in Ireland since he was 6. You see, it's the ideas that they can bring with them as well.
Yeah.
And
the ideology.
Because I was saying it to an earlier, I said, if you translate Allahu Akbar, in Irish it translates to up the IRA, because we had our own radicals too, and I don't think it's how do I put this? It's like the black community in America when they had Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. They were good for themselves and for their own interests, but not the greater good of the community. We had it here with Sinn Féin, and now the Muslim community, I'm sure, have it there, but they're not doing a very good job in calling it out and kind of condemning, let's say, these prominent kind of radicals that are just going to basically, like, they're not going to condemn this enough, because to my mind, when I heard of these two gentlemen and how they met their end, sounded more like a terrorist attack than anything else.
Yeah, I would say that. It sounded to me like a jihadi attack, to go out of your way to do what they did. It's beyond homophobia. That's just not it's too simplistic to call it homophobic. And then they're also at the Doyle today with the rainbow flag. I think that's missing the point. Karen, do you want to? What's your thought on that?
Well, I mean, at the moment I'm hearing a lot about, it's about blaming what we're not teaching children in schools. And I was watching a piece on GB News before I came on, and there was Mark Steyn. I don't know if you watch GB News or not, but they were talking about the response to these killings and how we're not open enough to the transgender community and the gay community, but we are open. We've actually voted for gay marriage, and we've come a long way in that and supporting that community. It's when you bring in a culture, as you say earlier on, Oliver, we bring in a culture that's against that kind of sexuality. It's going to clash, and they don't have the same thinking and openness and tolerance that we would have. And while we're not going to go beheading people, and even the journalist that was talking on the show said when we kill people, it's not that we don't go around beheading people, because Helen McEntee came out with a statement saying that we put this behind us. We don't go around beheading people.
That was it. I couldn't get my head around that remark. I mean, what was that remark? It's a very, very bizarre remark. She said that we've put this behind us. Like, I mean, Ireland, we have a history of beheading people. Like, I mean,
we do car bombs and things like that, but we don't go around. And obviously gangs kill each other through shootings, but we don't treat our gay people like that. And no, I'm not saying we've never had people who are gay killing people back in the 80s, but there was very few killings of gay people in Ireland. It's so few.
I mean, it's just in my view, they're just they're misappropriating it as a way of forcing in hate speech legislation. As always, the ordinary Irish people are going to suffer with draconian measures because of the government's incompetence.
And not only that, they're trying to use this not only to push the hate speech bill, they're trying to push the sex education, the way we're going to teach them through young people, through young children, as in 4 and 5 years old. So we're open to, they're open to that kind of teaching. That's too young. You're a child. Wait until they're older to be talking about, transgender and sex education. They're too young to understand. I don't need to know that information when you're 4 and 5. And let them be children and learn their maths and their Irish and their English and geography. And they're using that as well. So they're blaming primary education as well. that's just the jumping on that bandwagon. So we have to be very careful. So if you're a parent, you need to be kind of watching that. So you see what your children are being taught in
Yeah.
schools. So I've seen a big change in Australia, but I can't go into that now because it's going off the topic altogether. So
Oliver,
Right.
Una, do you want to come in on that point about
Like we're talking there about, the people coming into the country, and we'll say, in terms of, we'll say, take a country like Pakistan, it's moderately Muslim, and it was it in 2018, I think, according to the United Nations, in Pakistan, was it in and around 5,000 honor killings, or various killings of sorts, and this is supposed to be moderately Muslim. I mean, I think there's 2 billion Muslims in the world, and 80% of them believe that non-believers are, basically, that would say how they treat different people in these countries is perfectly okay. And yet, and for all, when you go to other countries, would say, like, would say the Gulf states, the wealthier Gulf states, there is law and order. There is not. You don't see the lawlessness there. We'll say the likes of Dubai and own places. I mean, it's just, like I said. Now it is hard to believe that this guy was in the country so long, and you think that would have basically,
yeah,
that he would have been, we'll say, westernized. Like kind of,
integrated.
yeah, that he would have assimilated, to, we'll say, Western way of life. But clearly, this wasn't the case. Now, many have, I'm sure, but
If people integrate, that's not so bad, but there's no integration here.
But you see, the problem is, like, similarly to what we saw this week coming out, was the apologies from Greater Manchester Police to the victims of the grooming gangs. What will happen is, when these ethnic groups will assimilate in large numbers and in areas, we are likely to see more of these things happen.
In poorer areas, especially.
Well, yeah, because
that's the scary thing about it. Is it going to be more the tip of the iceberg, as I say?
Well, you see, a lot of this too comes down to political policing and social justice, kind of politically motivated justice. Like, was this guy ever at the attention of the authorities before? Was he ever? Did he ever come across? Did the law ever come across him before?
No, I don't think they did, but like we say, we don't know, and we'll be finding out now whether or not he has got form, as in people coming forward, maybe, in his history.
Because sometimes, like previously, what we've seen with, especially in the likes of the UK, a lot of these people would have already been on watch lists,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't surprise me if this guy was. I'm not saying he was, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was.
But I don't think there's any checking at all. Doesn't seem to be any.
No.
There's a dereliction of duty. The Justice Minister McEntee is just, her idea is just to open up the door to 20,000. What was it? Or amnesty for illegals. And then when we go on, if we want to move it on to Ukraine, you've got there's no checking of anything coming on, and there's open doors to everything, which is, you go from the most severe lockdown in Europe on the one hand, and then the next minute you go to the biggest open door policy in the whole of Europe for the Ukraine thing. But I'll just finish up with a point. There was a gay guy out of, remember Jimmy Somerville, Bronski beat. He says, we're asking people to be, we're asked to be tolerant of people coming in, but it's hard to be tolerant towards intolerant people. There's certain ideologies are intolerant of, so it's hard for us to be tolerant. But anyway,
you see, what will happen there, folks, is same thing that will happen in Sweden. We will see likely a large spike in these types of incidents, and the media will paint it as Irish people and Irish men being intolerant, and that's how they'll paint it.
Yeah. Oh, if it was a narrative, if it was an Irish guy did that, and the same as if it was an Irish guy did the Ashley narrative, they lectured us for a whole week about Irish men's toxic masculinity, and then it all went quiet when the poor girl well,
Yeah.
it was the Bulgarian guy. It's
Yeah.
again, it's just propaganda.
It is.
Uh,
It is.
But we'll move on to Ukraine.
Mm.
Terrible situation that's going on there, but it's a very complicated situation. But we are
Seems
now
to be.
we're asking to be figures of 200,000 people. That's just the guy in Donegal. What's that TD's name in Donegal? He needs to be. There needs to be public shaming for people that can come out with those sorts of figures. England, Britain's taking in 100,000, and that means Ireland should really only be taking in 10,000, which would be manageable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Along the lines of our 10,000 homeless, so 200,000. Any thoughts on that, Karen? Oliver?
Well, it's way too much what we can cope with. I mean, we can't cope with what we have before that. I mean, we've been asked to step up to the mark even with our own properties. And I've noticed that it wasn't really being asked of us, with Syrian refugees or other refugees. And what I'm noticing, even in my own job, there's a directive come from the European Union that called the temporary protection, where the Ukrainians can get, say, accommodation or even healthcare. And recently, in the last 2 weeks, because I work in a hospital, they're flagging if a Ukrainian comes into a hospital to get healthcare, they're flagging it. Now, why are they doing that? And I'm just suspicious, because why are they flagging that and not flagging other refugees coming in for the same reason, like a Syrian or Pakistani or whatever? And I'm just wondering, why are they so interested in the Ukrainians coming into this country? I did speak to a friend of mine today, and the government are already they've identified 5,000 houses in this country that can be used to house the Ukrainians. And a friend of mine had been already contacted by the government because he has an Airbnb at his disposal, and they're looking to see if he'll hand it over. That's already starting. Now, why are they doing this? And also in Drogheda, there's a church that was empty there a few years ago. The Dominican priests had left it there about 2 or 3 years ago, and they're using that to house Ukrainians, where instead of looking after the Irish, because there's plenty of Irish people who are locally in the area who would easily be accommodated into that
Then
church.
they're saying that they're closing down shopping centres and leisure centres just like that with no notice and telling people, right, you have to go because this has been used for the Ukraine thing. It's just putting a lot of pressure. It's globalism on steroids, I think. It's just putting serious pressure on our people.
It's stripping off businesses
Yeah.
to the public, hotels.
Bruno, what do you think?
Personally, myself, and I think that it is going a step too far. Definitely, we should have had a cap of say 10,000, and then really do help them people. But like I was saying to Oliver, there's a word that came out called heroism, and it's like that we need to be like heroes, and we're going to fail an awful lot of people. We're not going to be able to provide everything for everyone, and I think that's my worry here in Ireland. That, like you say, with housing, especially with medical care and schools, I think I dread to think what it's going to be like in a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we keep hearing about the crisis, the health service and the housing crisis. And they don't seem to join up those two bits of information. You've got that in one breath, and then another breath, it's like unlimited numbers of tens, maybe hundreds of thousands coming in.
Yeah. Well, like what's worrying too is like you see this like kind of extremist ideology and rhetoric coming in. Karen touched on it earlier about the kids in schools. These people will tell you that with, like you say, with the health service to follow the science and do all these things, and yet some of the most high-ranking medical doctors can't define what a woman is. When they're asked, and like I said, it's very kind of condescending and patronizing to listen to these people, because I was only saying to Una the other day, after the pandemic and after, we'll say, this thing in Ukraine, anybody that wears a suit or a white coat or a badge, you can see straight through that, and you can see what's going to be like, the end game when we'll say if these people were never questioned, and if we all just followed.
There's no questioning of anything, I think it's a wee bit much when we're starting to sing the Ukrainian national anthem in schools, as you mentioned, and we're turning the buses yellow and blue, and we're told we have to go out and clap for this. It's like we were clapping for the COVID the health service the last time. Just we're told what to do around this. I mean, it's a terrible situation, and there's atrocity on both sides in it. I know what Putin's doing is terrible, but there are some of those Russian communities have not been treated well by the Ukrainians, and there are some ideologies coming in. I was actually talking to a guy in the north there during the week who would be kind of nationalist, and he's got a black girlfriend, and he said he's seriously worried about some of the very far right ones that are going to be coming in. There's going to be, we're talking about race riots. We ain't seen nothing yet,
Well, I tell you, we put down some notes here just for you and your viewers, right? This is something we came across a few days ago. Christina Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. I don't know if you're aware of this. Grandfather was Michael Chomlak, served as at the German invasion of Poland. He was a high-ranking active Nazi. So that Polish intelligence services were actively hunting Chomlak until the 1980s because he was in Canada. His granddaughter is Justin Trudeau's second in command.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Now, she was pictured in 2015.
Or was it actually recent? That could have been a recent rally, but I don't know. It could be 2015.
Yeah, no, I think it was in a 2015 rally, wearing, what was it again, the Bandera scarf, which is a movement for the far-right neo-Nazis. Now, that was in 2015. This is the same Canadian Prime Minister that called peaceful protesters neo-Nazis, knowing that his second in command is the granddaughter of a Nazi propagandist, and she was in Ukraine. So all this stuff that's happening in Ukraine now would say it's like they said, for 4 years a certain man sat in the White House, nothing happened in Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly.
But you see, as soon as the people that were setting up these dirty deals in Ukraine came back into the White House, which is the Biden crime family, business was back up and running.
Yeah, I'm very suspicious about it all. Like,
we also caught an interview where Zelensky's former advisor, I don't know if you saw this or not, he was, what was his name again?
Oh, this one's called Sari Lashenko.
Sari Lashenko, yes. He gave an interview in 2019.
Oh, that might not be him, though. I'm not too sure that this is just another guy.
Yes.
But let's talk about the interview.
Yes, we did see a clip. It was, I don't know if you're familiar with the Jimmy Dore show. This guy, he's kind of a left-wing guy in the US. His name is Jimmy Dore. He's good to watch sometimes. But he'd be like us, but he's kind of more socialist. But it showed in the interview this advisor to Zelensky mapping out the plot in 2019, what's happening today. Now, the plot was that they were going to antagonize Russia into the scrap, which they have done.
Yeah.
They were going to use their own people as cannon fodder. So, which they have done. Also, the plan was to level Ukraine so that NATO would have to take them in then.
Yeah.
This was the plan.
I think they provoked it, yeah. They knew he was going to react. I mean, there was shelling going on between Ukraine and the Russian
for years, 8 years.
Yeah.
I think they've provoked it, and they knew he would react. And the whole idea probably is to flatten the whole thing and let somebody come in, if not NATO.
And what I thought, I saw some when the Russian foreign minister was addressing the UN Security Council, and he mentions the issue of biolabs, and of course, like we'll say, like NATO and like the United Nations, they're only mouthpieces for the Americans, for the Washington and Wall Street war hawks.
The globalist Americans,
Yes, as I call them, the Washington and Wall Street war hawks. They run NATO, they run the United Nations, and there was this lady anyway, and she said we see no evidence of biolabs, and then 1 or 2 days later, it was confirmed that biolabs were there, you know. And when this one, oh, what was her name again? Was it Christina Newland?
Yeah, Freeland. Yeah,
What was her name again? Sorry.
Christie and Freeland.
No, this other. She was she the U.S. Secretary of State? Was she
Oh,
Newland?
yes.
Yeah, I mean, when this was being discussed back in 2015, she was quoted as saying, you know, "F the Europeans," you know, and you know when they were talking about, I suppose, potential collateral damage in regards to this conflict, or if there was going to be any, would say, whatever fallout would come from it. And her attitude was to Europeans was, you know, F them, you know, and
Yeah.
you know,
When you listen to the media, you'd think that was kind of, they're there for the long haul. I always ask who benefits, cui bono. I mean, Biden's ratings have gone up amazingly. Boris Johnson's ratings have gone up. It's good for journalists' careers. It's good for arms manufacturers. I think, I mean, the way they're saying that, they're almost going, oh, this is going to be the long haul. They don't want it over anytime soon, I don't think.
No, because I think Biden is providing heavier equipment for Ukraine now. And it's just like, for me, I thought, like, you know, at the moment it feels like Putin is holding back. It's like he's trying to be sympathetic about this, you know. I mean, a lot of the Russian forces have gone in, I think, are conscripts. They're not Spetsnaz anyway, that's for sure, you know. And of course, we've seen, I know a lot of the people that have gone there, I'd say, realize that it's a trap, that the Ukrainian forces are using them, like they said back in 2019, cannon fodder, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you said about over the last 4 years when Trump was in the White House, and it all got worse since that. And we were all told all the hogwash that they tell you about Biden's coming in. It's going to be a nice guy, Biden. The whole world's going to improve. And look at how it all got serious. Look at this. Prices of everything through the roof. But since the Second World War, I saw the data. The only times that Americans weren't involved in bombing any other countries was when Trump was in charge, you know.
Yeah.
And now we're back to this. Not
Yeah.
right. You know, so like Trump, despite his gaffes here and there, things were fundamentally have gone pear-shaped since he's been kicked out, I think, you know.
Yeah. Like one guy said once, he said, you know, you could sit down with Barack Obama and watch a basketball game, and you know he'd chat and talk, but he said if you went down the pub with Trump, you'd end up getting into a fight with him. But we still know who the better leader is, you know, because when I think it was Jordan Peterson said lately, he said a lot of these leaders that we're seeing now, he said they're all persona and no substance.
Yeah, they're all charismatic, that horrible word. I mean, they're all nice guys. I mean, George Bush Sr. was a nice guy, but look what he was involved in. Clinton comes across, Trump comes across as brash, but his instincts are right. And then we've got nice guy Biden, all the biggest psychopaths.
Yeah.
We're all the nicest guys out there, you know, sociopaths. It's like, but it's not so bad now. Trump, unless there's serious fraud again, Trump has to be a shoo-in to get in next time.
Yeah.
If he runs. I mean, nobody can. What do you think, Karen?
Well, if he runs, I'm sure he will. Hopefully, because I mean, I think his son is set up a new platform. I haven't seen it myself, but what I'm really concerned about is the response of the Irish. I mean, if you look at Dublin, I don't know, a bit down the country up in the north, it's like it's Ukrainian city. It's like all the flags of Ukraine is up on the lampposts and hanging there at pubs. And to me, that we never seen that with other wars. There's no flags, you know, up on the city for other wars.
It's the new thing to support, you see.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again?
It's the new thing. It's support the new thing.
The current thing.
New thing. We have to get. I mean, I'm staying in a hotel here in Dublin at the minute, and there used to be the tricolour outside it. It's gone now, you know. It's just that there's the watering down, the hollowing out of anything Irishness.
I had a message from someone, and they mentioned about not mentioning names, but they said that in a community centre in the past few weeks there had been 2 tricolours and 1 Ukrainian flag, And now this week, it's just Ukrainian flags. So two Ukrainian flags and the tricolour has come down. So if that is the case, like you say, that it's very bizarre, isn't it? Like you'd expect
And
at least
also,
to have tricolour up, but
It's very bizarre.
and
Yeah.
also in Tato Park, where there's families going as well. I was shown that by a friend of mine. You know, that's where families go, children go to play, and there's Ukrainian flags on one of the amusement,
A
machine.
bit overkill, like.
yeah.
I mean,
That's not
longer term, I mean,
inappropriate.
Ukrainian people, they are white Christian people. They should be able to integrate. I mean, the Polish ones have integrated well. Their children,
They have, yeah.
Mm.
children. I mean, if they kept it to sensible levels, I mean, maybe you could absorb. But the overkill that's going on is quite extreme.
Like one thing is like, you know, a lot of people were, it was just like a stopover for them until they get kind of legal status in other countries. Like would say when a lot of people turned up at for to be, was it in Roscommon, and they were from an African nation,
Yeah.
and it's like, obviously we're going to see a lot of this happening as well, because we'll say the problem is what we're realizing now is just how lawless Ukraine actually really is and was all along. And it's one of the largest country, well, quite large,
Very big country, yeah. It's a very big country.
And it's quite big for human traffickers and mafia, you name it. I mean, when you see like the Azov battalion being able to infiltrate every level of government, dictate policy, and when I first learned, I only learned recently, right? So it's pretty easy to put the pieces together. Now Zelensky's there, and if Zelensky tries anything other than off script, he knows that his life will be very short because of these people that he put around him. Because in the 2014 uprising, the Americans armed the Azovs. They knew who they were. They said, because they gave an interview about what they did to overthrow the government in 2014. And what they said was, if we weren't there to do what we did, it would have only turned into a gay parade. They said we were the muscle. And I think in the same interview, or maybe it was a separate interview, in relation to what they were doing in eastern Ukraine, they said, we're good at killing and we enjoy it because we're good at it.
Ultimately, it's not our responsibility. We can help out, but our responsibility, as I keep saying, it to our own citizens. And the government, they want to get pats on the back from the European overlords and say, "You're doing great. You're great over there in Ireland," but they're letting our own children go to bed hungry and buying drinks for everybody in the bar. It's completely irresponsible, and this is where our priorities are. I think we've lost our priorities. I think it was Arklow that thing with the leisure centre. They just closed down all the businesses in it, just like that.
However, Cottle, I am hearing on the ground though that some families who have put their hand up to accommodate Ukrainian families, they are backing down, and there have been problems internally in some households where one woman, I know it's an exception because regarding a woman was a prostitute into her home and they're left leaving the child on its own. So I mean, that's an exception. You wouldn't get that all the time. There is a clash of cultures. I know you're saying they're similar to the Polish nations or a Christian community or Christian, history, but you're still going to have clashes, because you're asking families to accommodate if a family coming from a war, and then you have they're in your home, and then like, how are you going to cope with that?
But they're going to have mental health issues. We just can't. We've overreached here. You need
people
professionally trained. There's going to be problems on both sides. People aren't being vetted that are doing it. People maybe are offering it for the wrong reasons. It's open to all sorts of abuse, exploitation.
Yeah,
it's just they're putting. Somebody actually said, who is pro-immigration, that multiculturalism is a very challenging situation, no matter what they're doing. But they just seem to be full steam ahead doing it. With no limits to anything.
Audrey, kind of touched something there earlier on about the Nazism in Ukraine. I heard during the week another activist over in Galway talking about at the moment we're led to believe that young children and women are coming to Ireland, but there is an element, and I'm hearing this. I can't confirm it completely, but this particular activist would be familiar with military people generally from a previous job, and they were in Galway. He lives in Galway, and he had seen Ukrainian military men in the area in Galway city, looking at the buildings and the roofs above in the area of Galway City and Limerick. And another friend of mine told me that the Russian flag was flown in trucks on the M1 motorway here in Ireland. Now, what's that about? Like, it's not just we're being told we're looking after refugees. It's more to it than that.
They're all different. The different groups are all going to start becoming jealous of each other's groups. That's all going to be. You're just transporting the problem into this. We made a point there. We have a duty of care to fleeing women and elderly. Yes, we do have a duty of care up to a point. Yeah, but what about Irish neutrality? We're going to talk about that. How far is Ireland's duty of care? Una, what do you reckon? Ireland's neutrality here. Have we lost our neutrality, or are we neutral? Or how far should our duty of care
we
go?
like to pretend we're neutral, but I don't think Ireland has ever
In reality,
been
we're not.
many decades because of, as they call it, which was a good title of it, the conveyor belt of death in Shannon. We've been supposed responsible for many years of a lot of wars. We kind of, I suppose, accomplish to these atrocities that have happened. So we're not, but we have had a hand in it, and neutrality is something that's. Neutrality is something that we hope for, but I don't think we are really neutral at all. But
I don't know. Somebody mentioned a point there. How many did we take in during the Second World War? I mean, I don't think we took numbers in like what was going on, like anywhere near this. So it's just as I say, it's like globalism on steroids or on overdrive. Karen, what do you reckon about our neutrality? We're going to take in.
I think it's on paper only, and I know our government wants to get rid of it. And what I've seen in the news recently, while Irish people want to hold on to it, and the government is not listening to it, and they want to revisit this question. And because we have signed our say so, our current Taoiseach signed the deal back in 2017, signed us up to the PESCO deal, which means EU army, and they're trying to get us from NATO. It's not something we want as people. No. The government wants. And I mean, Una's right. We lost our neutrality when we handed our Shannon airport over to the Americans, allowing their planes to come in loaded with weapons, so they can go off to another war in another country to fight. And obviously, they also used Germany as well as a base.
Yeah.
Well, they use Ireland as a base, and then you have the PESCO deal. So it's like we've no real neutrality as such, even though we may send our soldiers into, say, Lebanon as peacekeepers. That's just
there's no critical thinking.
One step away from getting involved in the war, and now they want. I mean, where's training some of our soldiers up as special groups, those battle groups in Norway, and they're trying to create new battle groups. That's not neutrality, and they're involving our soldiers. That's not neutrality.
They're not doing their job again, and they're not discussing this properly.
Say that again.
Media aren't discussing this properly.
No.
They're not. They're just propagandists. They're just giving one side of the story. That is the definition of propaganda.
Right.
However, they are showing the polls in a very good light towards what we want. At least 64% of us want to keep our neutrality. We don't want to be getting involved in wars at all.
And then it's going to be an open invitation for Putin to say, well, okay, you're fighting, you're a target. Oliver, what were you going to say there?
We'll say, for example, like this conflict has turned Europe on its head, and it's not been realized yet, because Germany had to double its defense budget spending. If, like, back in 2018, when Orange Man Bad addressed the UN General Assembly, the Germans laughed at him, and everybody was scoffing, but they're not laughing today. He told them to get off Russian gas,
Yeah.
and he said America is paying for Europe's defense budget. Now the Americans want their taxpayer dollars spent in America. This was always going to happen sooner or later because America wants a fiscally nationalist policy for themselves, and they're right. Now Europe has to step up and pay for their own defense budget, which means their generous social programs or social welfare programs will have to take a hit. Now a lot of people are going to feel the hurt of that, and the next question is, when all of this defense spending in European nations like Germany and France and we'll say other nations will have to be increased, we'll say from, what was it in Germany, 2% to 4% of GDP, and if other countries have to follow suit, then who's going to man these armies? So definitely I think conscription is on the way, and who do they decide? How do they decide who gets conscripted? Because I don't think it'll be random.
Yeah. What do you think, Una?
I think, well, definitely was conscription. I think it is on the way. It's probably done from ages of 18 to say maybe 40 at first, maybe a year, 6 months training, and then you'd be on standby ready to, I suppose, go to wherever you have to go. Certain people will be excluded, but I do think it's on the way. I've seen it written somewhere that they said that Ireland has never had conscription, but there are countries thinking about it. We're going to follow in their footsteps under the government that we have. They'll send us out there.
Oh yeah, I can't see it not coming in, really. Did you see the video that Philip Dwyer did at Dublin Airport with all the Ukrainians coming in?
Yeah. I saw a little.
That would be comedy if it wasn't so serious. I think that actually went viral. It was going around the world,
Yeah.
I think it went around the world, that didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, but with these like I say now, Donald Trump, he sounded the alarm back in 2018, and he warned people because, like, we'll say I'm a dairy farmer, and back in, was it 2014, the Chinese came to Ireland, to do to see how we do the dairy farming so well. And the funny thing is, even back then in 2014, they had a parallel banking system set up with Russia, in anticipation of heavy sanctions, so they'd be immune from it. So they, like, these superpowers, these are real superpower countries, and sanctions, like, I think the ruble has recovered.
Only goes so far, yeah.
And the sanctions now that have been implemented, normally if that was done against any other country, the country would have vanished by now. But Russia is there, and they have plenty allies, and their allies are a lot more powerful than the Western media are willing to admit.
Yep. Right. Well, guys, I know it's Saturday night and it's near Easter. I'll not keep anybody any later. If anybody... Great. Thanks for coming in, Oliver and Una, especially. It's the first time.
Thank you very much for inviting us. Yes.
Can you share it amongst your social media, whatever? Get it as wide as possible. Karen, you as well.
Yeah.
Colette. Gonna say Colette back, and I haven't seen her for a while. Great. Thanks for coming in, Colette. We're just about to pack it in, but we'll have it on. We'll put it up on YouTube and stuff, and it'll be there for all the. But it's things aren't getting any way better soon, are they?
No. I guess the odd silver linings that are turning up, we saw this week now, was all this furore over will the world's greatest African American buy Twitter, Elon Musk. Because, you know, when you see Vanguard and these companies and, you know, quaking in their boots, you know, it's, you know, it shows like the establishment is afraid, and that people have an appetite for the truth to get out there, and that's what they want.
Yeah.
And
It's just balance. I want balance of
yes,
what's wrong with that?
and what we see now is Twitter is being run the same way a lot of countries are being governed, not with, basically it's like a cult of ideology, and hopefully, like I said, that'll change. I mean, in the last couple of years, there are now, even without Donald Trump, the amount of progress that would say the Republicans have made, or conservatives, is, you know, they're taking back control of the schools. They're doing everything to fight back. And I think we should start, you know, basically have a strong ground game over here to replicate that here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant.
No,
Guys, thank you. Sláinte. Karen, you
Good
want to
night.
chip in finally, or we'll just wrap it up then? Yeah.
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 Good night,
All right, guys. Have a
everyone.
great Easter, and we'll be in touch, and keep smiling. And
okay.
Okay. Good night.
All right.
Bye.
All the best.
Bye.
Slán.
Take
Bye.
care.
Slán.
Bye-bye.